I have 6 o'clock and I would like to open the meeting of the building committee tonight. I do declare that we have a quorum here. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Are there any corrections to the minutes? Yes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion by Mr. Nollner to approve the minutes. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Whitaker. All in favor of the minutes being approved, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The minutes stand approved. We will start out with our first item of business is the election of officers. Is there any nominations for chair of the committee? Yes, sir, Mr. Nollner.
I make a motion to leave all the officers as they are.
We have a motion by Mr. Nollner to leave all the officers as they are. Is there a second? Mr. Buckmaster seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Officers do remain as they were. We will get into our discussion items with the courthouse improvements. The election commission offices, if we could address that first, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They have replaced all the lighting in there with LED lighting, repainted it and fixed some places around the walls. It looks a lot better in there. They still have to do the flooring, and the HVAC system has been an issue. We can address that as we get down in there, but as far as everything else, right now they're just waiting on the HVAC system, what we're going to do on that before they can do the flooring, because you have to get to a consistent humidity and temperature and everything in the room before you got to let the flooring acclimate, and then they got to put it in and do the ceiling and everything else like they did in the main hallway down here before they put that in. So that's the holdup right now. Kind of related to this, but somewhat off topic, is we did have more broadband access put into other rooms throughout the courthouse to accommodate any other uses, and specifically the downstairs courtroom to accommodate hooking up voting machines in there, because the gentleman that came from the Tennessee Disability and Advocacy Center recommended using that space as the early voting location. And I know they have to have secured internet connections and those kind of things. And so we got some connections run into that room as well. So every room in the downstairs part of the courthouse has multiple broadband connections. So we should have more than enough connections for not just broadband, but it also has a phone port for our voice over internet phone system as well.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for the mayor in regard to that? Yes, sir, Mr. Nollner.
How did they do with that heater that was leaking? Has it been replaced? Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe you said something, I didn't hear it. Battery just went out in my ear here. The heater and stuff that was leaking, has it been, y'all replaced it yet?
They just actually took it out of the system. It hasn't been replaced or repaired until we figure out what we're going to do on the HVAC system. It had a real bad leak that they could not get to stop, and it was damaging whatever work they do to the floor. So they went ahead and kept that off and removed that unit until we decided what to do on the HVAC system. So that was, like I said, a preventative measure because it was continuing to leak and damage the floor.
Thank you.
Mr. Paxton, I see you in the audience. Would you like to address this?
Yes, sir, a little bit. Oh, head button. I just wanted to make sure that we're all working with the same types of deadlines. The mayor had come and asked me, were we still good aiming for the end of January, beginning of February? And yes, but you need to be aware of what's going to happen now. With the May primary being called, I'm going to start issuing petitions on December the 20th. So I don't know that we'll have anybody here, but I do know that people who are in other counties in the judicial district will be required to bring us certified copies of theirs. So that's a little bit concerning, but they can find where we are. And the deadline for them is going to be February the 17th. But then February the 7th is when we start doing all the other petitions. And that's all of our local petitions, as well as anyone who's going to be in the August primary, which would be state Senate and state House and things like that. So we are coming up on, you know, depending on what we find with the HVAC, we're coming up on kind of a drop dead date for us to move. We would not want to move, and we think it would be irresponsible to move once we get into that cycle. Once we get going in that cycle, to move back and forth, plus just the physical movement of it would be difficult while we're trying to issue petitions, receive petitions. And then we're going to get into, like I said, the 17th of February is when the primary, that's the last day primary turns in, and then we're going to start printing ballots, doing absentee, all those type of things. So we just need to keep that in mind as we move forward. The mayor and I have talked several times, and we're good right now where we are, but we are coming up on the kind of the short end of it. If we can't take action. The other thing is, and the mayor touched on it, the downstairs courtroom, we would like to use that as the early voting site. That's what they've suggested. There's a much better flow in there, but that will require removing at least part of the podium down there so we can have an in and out flow. So we'd like to try to see that happen as well. We should be able to do that with county workers, just taking that out, that dais that's down there, so that they can come in the one door and go out the other door, and that way we'll have a good flow in there. As for the connections and what the room looks like, yes, we're happy with that. It looks like we're moving forward well on that, and we appreciate that. They've done a good job of getting that room ready to be occupied, and we understand the mayor has explained to us why we're waiting on the floor. So we're just going to get to a point where we're at the short hairs there. So we just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of some of what those dates were. Now,
what is the date that you need to move by?
well, what we originally said was,
When would you like to move by?
we'd like to move it obviously as early as we can, but no later than February the 1st. To be moved, and let me rephrase that, to be moved by February the 1st, not hustling boxes out the door then. We'd like to be moved and set up by that date. So that's kind of what we're shooting for. We understand you're also working with, you know, with contractors and other things, that it's not anybody dragging their feet. It's just trying to get things done. We've re-advertised it. We went ahead and increased the pay, the hourly pay. We advertised it the first time, and we had a couple of candidates, and a couple of them looked good. And then they just said, well, that's just not enough for me to be able to do this. So we came to the county commission, got a budget request, and raised that pay a little bit. So we've re-advertised it. The deadline for that is actually Thanksgiving. So it'll be probably the week after Thanksgiving, then we'll start investigating, trying to find somebody. Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Hart.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Buckmaster has a
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
Is there any time of a mass mailing that is associated with this move? And if so, is there a time frame that needs to be done by?
There is a deadline, yes. The legal deadline is going to be March the 19th. March the 19th, I'll have to put in the paper where the election commission office is located. And then 10 days later, I'll have to put in there where we're doing early voting. So we have to have a permanent spot by that time. So as for a mass mailing, we do not have to do a mass mailing about moving the election commission office, but we will have to do some mailing about the redistricting that we did. So we'll want to make sure that we get that done as well. What the election commission was looking at was doing that all in one mailing. It just saved the county money. It made more sense to do that, to try to mail it all out at once. But if we come up on this deadline, we'll have to start mailing out the new districts and then eventually the location of the election commission. So.
Mr. Mayor, do you think we'll be able to meet these deadlines?
To be honest with you, I don't know. The HVAC system is the big hurdle right now. That's what's holding up everything.
And how we're coming on that?
Well, I'm expecting a proposal submitted by Cope Architecture sometime this week. And we actually had Train was up here earlier today looking at the HVAC system. And they were going to put together a proposal as well. I actually sent them our utility bills and they were going to look it over and put together proposals to what they thought the system should be. They said they had just recently done the same thing in Wilson County for a courthouse work there. And it is, the way they're writing it, some of their suggestions is going to be geared towards making it eligible for use of American Rescue Funds for ventilation system improvements.
I realize we're getting a little ahead of ourselves on the agenda, but I thought it'd be a good time to go on and speak to that since it's an issue here. Could you use the mic, please?
And then I would say that if we get into the election cycle, then the election commission would want to wait until after the November 8th election to move. Because, and I realize that's a time, but between those, we've got 3 elections this year with the primary and they're going to overlap. So we would not, I don't think it would be prudent to move during that period of time.
Any other questions for Mr. Paxton? Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes, sir. The next item is the windows here in the courthouse. Have we made any progress on that, Mayor?
I've been having trouble finding any firms to actually send that out to. I did near the end of October find that Bedford County had an RFP out for window work, window restoration at their courthouse. It came in around October the 25th. They had one bidder called Southern Preservation Systems out of Loganville, Georgia. They had gotten a Tennessee Historic Commission grant for $26,000, which they had to match for another $26,000. So they had roughly, they told me $44,396. The bid for that project came in at $261,965. Mr. Slee and I have looked at the windows and he's got a worker he thinks can do some of the work. And I've talked to Mr. Oliver. He has experience dealing with historic windows and he can address us as well. We've kind of went around to some of them that we can get to on the first floor. Some of them are in really good shape. You just think they look like they're rough, but once you just get through the paint and everything, they're actually still solid. You can knock on them and everything and they don't sound hollow or anything like that. They seem to be in pretty good shape. So it's just, I think if we go around and pick out the ones that are certainly going to need a lot of work, then try to do that on that basis then. Looking to try to renovate or rehabilitate them in place, meaning you don't take the windows out. So that's what my aim is, to try to do it that way.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other questions in regard to the windows for the mayor? We'd just mentioned the heating and air system here in the courthouse. Do you have anything further to add to that?
No, sir. Just reiterate that we got the one, Cope Architecture is going to submit their proposal sometime this week. And then Train was here and they thought they could get one together pretty quickly as far as what their initial proposal is going to be, just based on their walkthrough of the building here. And as part of Cope coming out and looking at it, they did get blueprints for the courthouse and were able to digitize those for us. So now we have digitized blueprints from the courthouse when they did the expansions of the 2 wings here in either the 60s or 70s, plus plans that they did when they did renovations on the courtroom here in, I think, 2007, 2010, somewhere around in there.
Any other questions for the mayor in regard to this? Moving along, do we have any other business to come before the building committee. Anyone know of anything else that we need to discuss? You, Mr. Mayor?
I have gotten a couple of calls from people in commercial real estate about the land the county owns next to the fire hall, about whether or not that would be available. They seem to be interested until you tell them that they're gonna have to put fill in there, and it may be 4 feet or so that they're gonna have to put in there, and then I think their interest wanes a little bit, but I have gotten some of those just kind of out of the blue here in the last few months, and one of the things they asked is, would the county be interested in selling it? And I told them, well, up front, I really don't know. Looking at it, if you were to sell it, if you do it for what was due at the time of taxes, it's really not going to be that much money that you're going to get off of it. You'll mainly be doing it for any economic development purposes going in the future. But that's something I'll bring to committee if you want to think about that. Would you be interested in selling that property? Would you retain it for county purposes or whatnot? Not a decision has to be made tonight, but I just want to let you know that I am getting those calls, and I could see those increasing in the future once you start seeing things bounce back in the economy. A stronger bounce back in the economy. So I just wanted to, like I said, let you know about that so you can be thinking about what you would be considering to do with that property.
Does anybody have any comments in regard to this property down here by the fire hall that the mayor's talking about, people being interested in purchasing? Well, moving on, do you have anything else?
No, we have some things we're trying to develop. We've been speaking to the housing authority about possible uses of county land for any affordable housing, but those are in the very, very early stages. Nothing concrete right now. Right now, it's just kind of an idea to see if there's any benefit there. We're working with Greater Nashville Regional Council's Planning and Economic Development Director named Angela Hubbard. She was formerly with the Metro Nashville Public Housing Authority. So she's given us some advice there. So we're looking at some alternatives or any opportunities there. But like I said, it's very, very early stages at this point, and right now there's nothing really to go on. It's just an idea at this point.
Yes, Mr. Jewell.
Did we need to cover the possible addition to the health center? I mean, the health department building?
At this point, oh, I can bring it up. Yes, sir. The new health director came and looked at the facility, talked to the staff, and had an idea or wanted us to look into expanding at the back of the health department building. As when they started bringing in their COVID supplies and everything, they actually had to bring in a trailer and a little storage building. So their COVID supplies are not even inside the building. He wanted to expand that building to bring in the storage inside, so that they got all their PPE and COVID testing supplies and all that indoors. Looking at the American Rescue Fund, that's almost right on point with some of the things regarding public health facilities about improving those. It would bring in storage of directly related to COVID, because that's their COVID testing supplies and whatnot. He wanted to add another examination room, and he also said some office space because they have problems right now with social distancing inside the facility. And I have talked to the highway department. They own the property right behind the health department. They would be willing to transfer some of that property to the county so we could expand that building. But as we go forward, I mentioned this, I can't remember if it was at steering committee or county commission and whatnot, that I would like us to look at the possibility of retaining a general civil engineering firm. So when we have these projects, we have multiple projects that we're looking at down the pipeline, specifically regarding American Rescue Fund. So instead of having to do an RFQ for each and every little project to choose an engineering firm, I think we went through that process, chose one at the beginning, made sure we did it just like we do any grants. That way, if we meet those requirements up front, and then use that firm going forward to get plans and designs and numbers as what those costs are going to be as we do some of these projects.
Thank you, Mayor. This is something that's really needed down there, and I think we need to try to move forward with it, as much as we can. They really do need the extra space. I think that building has been woefully inadequate in storage space ever since it was built. They have continuously had problems with codes violations where they were stacking things into, utility closets that had panels in it and things that they weren't supposed to be putting anything in. And so I think that needs to be addressed. And if we can use some of that funding to do it, it seems like a good use of it, in my opinion. Just want us to see us know that we're looking at that, and hopefully we can proceed with that into the near future.
Guess it's a little early for any action from this committee in regard to this tonight. Just know that this is something that we need to be looking at. Any other comments in regard to this or anything else? Yes, sir, Mr. Whitaker.
Mr. Harsh, not in regard to that, but I got a question. Maybe Mr. Oliver can answer it. Down at CJC, the button that you push to open the glass doors. Okay, now it's mounted on the left-hand side of the wall as you go through. Actually, wonder how much trouble would it be to move it over there and close to where the metal detector, because it's really of no use over there where it's at. You think that would be a big problem to move, Mayor, to you?
I think that'd be a question for Mr. Salee. I don't know if that's something our Public Works Department could do, or if that'd have to be a contractor to come and look at it. So I would just suggest we reach out to Public Works, have them come and look at it and see, get an idea about moving that.
All right, appreciate it, y'all.
Do we need to look at the sale of surplus property? Is that under buildings?
That's not under the building committee. That's under committee for resale of land. There's actually one of them that the housing authority had questions about. So I'm going to take that off the list. That's the Red Scruggs property over here. And then there is still one more. We're trying to get information sewn up on it. And then I'm hoping, I know I've been saying this numerous times, I'm hoping to have those ready to go in either January or February. Go ahead and get those advertised. And then there are other county properties that we're not proposing to sell right now, but we are looking for alternatives for them that the county has had. There's one of them, I can tell you right now, we've had it since the fire in 1904 because the records burned up in the courthouse and they never recorded the deed on it. So we're trying to find out what the use for that property was historically, and then what we can maybe do with it in the future.
What is, when are they going to start working on repairing the bridge? Is that?
As soon as we can get Mr. Thigpen evicted from the building, which I believe we're supposed to go to court in December. While he's in there, there's nothing we can do for it. Once we do have a complete and total control of that building, I'm going to contact TDOT and see if we can start moving forward. They were supposed to do some internal discussions concerning that building because there were some questions raised as we were going through the right-of-way meeting, and some questions were asked that higher ups in TDOT had to answer, and I have not received any update on that. But the last I was told is once we have full control of the building, they want me to notify them as soon as possible.
Do we have any other comments on anything here tonight? Any public comments, Chris? If we have nothing more to come, yes, sir, Mr. Nolan.
I was gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Nolan makes a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Mr. Jewell seconds. All in favor? All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.